Choosing a new NATO chief may sound difficult, but this is not the only problem NATO has right now. The alliance has a new headache. Former German fighter pilots who could have shared NATO's tactics with China. Sounds alarming, right? Well, Germany sure is worried. The report first came out in German newspaper Der Spiegel. It says former German fighter pilots are training Chinese forces. Now, it is common for militaries to cooperate. They often share tactical and technical information. In fact, Germany has conducted military training programs with China before. But these are former German pilots. They are there on lucrative contracts. They are not bound by any rules or diktat. While serving in the army is a lifelong commitment, it is not so hard and fast right now. The reason for this is military contracting. Former officers now have a lot of options. They can take their skill sets elsewhere. But is that necessarily a good thing? Not really. There are fears that these pilots could have shared military secrets. Secrets like confidential operational tactics, practiced attack scenarios, and even crucial information about NATO air operations. Now, these are former Luftwaffe pilots. We're talking about Germany's aerial warfare. They learn crucial skills like suppression of enemy air defense and destruction of enemy air defense. Both of these are classic Luftwaffe forte. If they do pass this skill set to China, it could make the PLA a lethal force. It could help Beijing gain air superiority in any fight, especially in a fight against Taiwan. Germany too has the same fear. Now, legally, there's nothing wrong with this. This sort of private work does not violate any laws. But there's a legal grey zone. Retired service members often have retroactive service obligations. This means they must report the work they are doing. The ministry then conducts a security check and the employment can be denied. But Germany wants to stop this practice altogether. The defense minister is calling on China to end it. Last week, Boris Pistorius met his Chinese counterpart. This was at the Shangri-La Dialogue. He asked him to stop this policy immediately. Now, Pistorius says China did not deny the practice of hiring former pilots, but played down the significance. Basically, Beijing doesn't think this is a big deal. And why would they? They are the ones benefiting from this arrangement. Now, this practice is not new. It has been going on for a decade now. It is also not limited to Germany. This is a NATO-wide issue. Last year, there were similar reports from UK. It mentioned 30 former pilots of the British Royal Air Force. They were apparently advising the PLA, teaching them NATO tactics and Western military doctrine. So clearly, Beijing has had a long history of doing this, using Western know-how to help its military. Essentially, what they do is offer lucrative contracts and in return, steal secrets of Western military practices. But why is West or the NATO not alarmed yet? Are they underestimating China's growing military power, or are they consumed with a war at their borders? Either way, NATO needs to wake up to this problem. They need to safeguard their military doctrine. Germany seems to have realized this late. They are now looking at ways to stop this. UK too is mulling tightening its laws, but the alliance needs to act decisively. They must tackle this before it blows up. They must realize that prevention is better than cure. Let's talk about Ukraine's allies, the NATO. As we mentioned yesterday, NATO is in a bind. Yesterday, we told you how NATO was divided over Ukraine's membership. Of course, it isn't the only country to cause rifts in the alliance. There's also Sweden. Stockholm seems desperate to join the security group. The Swedish Prime Minister reportedly made an announcement today. He said Sweden will allow NATO to base troops on its territory even before it formally joins. This seems like a last-ditch attempt to get over the line and join the security alliance. Sweden wants to officially be welcomed during the next NATO summit. That will take place in Lithuania's capital, Vilnius, on July 11. Sweden announced that it wanted to join NATO last year, but its membership has been stalled by Turkey and Hungary. Most of the resistance is from Turkey. Ankara has accused Stockholm of harboring what it calls terrorists. These are Kurdish people who are part of the Kurdistan Workers' Party or PKK. Ankara calls it a terror group and says Sweden is allowing it to thrive. So far, Turkey has vetoed the Nordic nations' membership. Well, it seems Sweden is making desperate moves to secure entry into NATO. And on Wednesday, it agreed to extradite a member of the Kurdistan Workers' Party to Turkey. This is part of the demands made by Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Stockholm also enacted a new anti-terror law that targets the PKK. All of this is to appease Erdogan and get his nod to joining NATO. Sweden recently made this appeal to Turkey and Hungary. Listen it.
Everything that we undertook to deliver during the Madrid summit is fulfilled, and it is time for Turkey and Hungary to start the ratification of the Swedish membership to NATO. That is the clear message that I will send, and I have already received before this meeting, clear signs of the commitment and the support that we feel from several of the NATO member states. And I believe that this will be reinforced during today's meeting as well.
The appeal was echoed by NATO's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. He was in Turkey a few days ago. He was there to convince Erdogan not to veto Sweden's membership.
Sweden has taken significant concrete steps to meet Turkey's concerns. This includes amending the Swedish constitution, ending its arms embargo, and stepping up counterterrorism cooperation, including against the PKK. Important new terrorism legislation has come into force just a few days ago. So Sweden has fulfilled its obligations.
So will this work? Will Erdogan drop his objections in time for the next NATO summit? Or will the problem of Sweden's membership be passed on to the next NATO chief? Because you see, Stoltenberg is up for retirement soon. He will step down as a NATO Secretary General on September 30. If he doesn't resolve the issue soon, Sweden will become his successor's headache. Who will that successor be? There hasn't been any announcement, but there are a number of possibilities. Reports say some NATO members want the next chief to be from Eastern Europe. It's the region closest to Ukraine and most at risk from Russian aggression. The Lithuanian and Estonian prime ministers are reportedly being considered. They also happen to be women, which would give NATO its first female chief. That adds to their chances. Another candidate in the running is Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen. She's reportedly keen on the job and recently met US President Joe Biden in Washington. Another frontrunner is British Defence Secretary Ben Wallace. He's a former soldier and respected across the alliance. Rishi Sunak was in the US to meet Biden. He's expected to have talked up Wallace for the role. Reporters even asked Biden about the possibility. Here's what he said.
Is it time for a British NATO Secretary General?
Maybe. That remains to be seen. We're going to have to get a consensus within NATO to see that happen. They have a candidate who's a very qualified individual, but we're going to have we have a lot of discussion, not between us, but in NATO, to determine what the outcome of that will be.
So Biden says NATO needs to come to a consensus. But his backing is considered crucial and he has not backed anyone publicly yet. Whatever happens, the next few months are crucial for NATO. The war in Russia and Ukraine's possible membership are tricky issues. And if Sweden has not joined by then, the next NATO chief will likely have their hands full. Talking about things that are making a comeback, the El Nino is back. The world has officially entered an El Nino phase. But there's nothing to cheer about. In fact, there's a lot to worry about. Let me explain. In Spanish, El Nino means the little boy. South American fishermen first noticed it in the 1600s. It is a natural climate pattern born out of unusually warm waters in the eastern Pacific. There's also the La Nina, which means little girl in Spanish. La Nina is a cold event, the exact opposite of El Nino. El Nino and La Nina keep alternating, typically for months and even years. However, scientists are not sure what kicks off this cycle. So basically, we had 3 years of La Nina, a cooler weather pattern. Now we are going to deal with El Nino, its hotter counterpart. Now the thing about El Nino is that it is a weather pattern. It is not like a storm. It doesn't hit immediately. Global temperatures typically increase during an El Nino episode. So what it fuels is extreme weather. The stronger the El Nino, the stronger the extreme weather impacts. The last time we saw a strong El Nino in full swing was 2016. So it has been a few years now. But 2016 was the hottest year on record. And scientists believe 2024 will be no different. In fact, it could be one for the record books.
2024, I think, is a year that if you're looking for a potential global record in terms of temperatures and El Nino with the continued warming since the 2016 El Nino, could lead to 2024 being one for the record books. But that is, of course, no means a guarantee because weather and the randomness of our atmosphere still plays a part.
So 2024 could become the world's hottest year. Global temperatures are currently hovering at 1.1 degrees Celsius above average. But the El Nino event could push it even higher, closer to the symbolic 1.5 degrees Celsius guardrail. If that happens, climate alarm bells will be ringing hard. Imagine more freak weather.
Most of the warmest years on record that we've seen in the past have happened due to the influence of El Nino because it gives that little bit extra push onto the global temperatures on top of the warming that we're already causing due to human-caused climate change.
Now, the onset of any El Nino event could take time, but once it happens, it will be felt across the globe. Extreme weather will be the new normal. So, heavy rainfall in South America, drought in Australia and Asia, drought-like conditions in the Horn of Africa, and tropical cyclones in the Pacific. If we go by past experiences, there will be a huge human and economic cost too. The last strong El Nino in 1998 cost the world $5 trillion. 23,000 people died from storms and floods. Estimates suggest this year's El Nino could lead to losses worth $3 trillion. As for India, New Delhi remains extremely wary. El Nino could disrupt India's monsoons and impact crop prices, thus fueling inflation.
Uncertainties, however, remain on the spatial and temporal distribution of monsoon and the interplay between El Nino and the Indian Ocean dipole. Geopolitical tensions, uncertainties around the monsoon and international commodity prices, especially sugar and rice and also crude oil, and the volatility in global financial markets pose upside risks to inflation.
Agriculture is a key cornerstone of India's $3 trillion economy. Annual monsoon is crucial to its food output, so any impact on India's monsoon could be devastating. Monsoon may have reached the southern state of Kerala a week later, but the meteorological department is not worried yet. They say India will receive normal rainfall. So the El Nino is back for now. It may be called the little boy in Spanish, but it is definitely having a big impact on the world. As the El Nino returns, extreme weather is not far behind, and countries must gear up to deal with it. Yesterday was World Ocean Day, and people celebrated it across the world. But nobody caught our attention as much as Brazil did. What did Brazilians do to celebrate the day? Well, they hugged the ocean. You'd think that's impossible. But where there's a will, there's always a way. And when people come together, just about anything is possible, even hugging something as humongous as the ocean. Tonight, we'll talk about the oceans, why they're so important, and why Brazilians shouldn't be the only ones hugging them. Because the oceans are becoming the world's trash can. And the time is to act now.
Want to hug the ocean? Here's how you do it. Stand in one line. Hold hands with the two people standing next to you and watch a larger phenomenon unfold as hundreds, even thousands of people join hands together on the shores of the sea, all to hug the ocean. This is how Brazil's Rio Beach looked on Thursday. Brazilians held their hands for a symbolic hug. Volunteers also participated in cleaning drives. You'd think, what's the need for such an event? It's for raising awareness about the need to protect waters and marine life.
I think that we are in a game change for the planet, We need to think better, about our habits, our consumption, We need to think better about ourselves, to take care of the animals, to take care of the nature, We're not alone here. We're not an individual, We are together. We are one, This is the message for the new generation.
So the hug wasn't just an extracurricular activity. For the hundreds of Brazilians that took part, it was part of a campaign to save the oceans. Because the oceans are hurting, and they're an extremely important part of the Earth. Oceans account for 70% of the Earth's surface, and they play a crucial role in the health of the natural ecosystem. Not just for marine life, but for life on Earth as a whole. And yet, billions of pounds of trash and pollutants are dumped into the oceans every year. This despite the fact that oceans are majorly responsible for regulating the Earth's climate. Here's an interesting fact. You thought most of the world's oxygen was produced by trees and dense forests? Wrong. By the Amazon forest, perhaps? Again, wrong. About 50% of the Earth's oxygen comes from the oceans. This year, the main purpose of World Ocean Day was to build ocean literacy and raise awareness about the importance of the oceans. 97% of the planet's surface water is found in the oceans. 97% of the planet's surface water is getting contaminated, so we can't afford to be indifferent to marine pollution. Why? Because, for starters, it's harmful to marine species or aquatic life. Next, excess pollution causes depletion of oxygen within oceans, endangering many aquatic species. To top it all, pollution also leads to an excess of nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus in the oceans. These nutrients promote the growth of algae. They suck up most of the oxygen and prevent sunlight from penetrating the oceans, creating dead zones. As the name suggests, no aquatic life can be found in these zones. So just how polluted are our oceans? Well, there's no exact figure available, but a recent study estimates that the world's oceans are polluted with 171 trillion plastic particles, and the number is only increasing, which is why environmentalists are sounding the alarm. And people are comforting oceans by hugging them, because they are drowning in pollution.
And with that, I bring you Vantage shots, images that tell the story. If the pictures from New York were not apocalyptic enough, smoke from Canadian wildfires have now blanketed the US capital. Washington, D.C. is now choking on smog. Meanwhile, Ukrainians are using boats to cross the streets after the Kakhovka Dam blast caused floods in parts of South Ukraine. And how many ducks are good for luck? Hong Kong says 2. Giant inflatable double ducks set sail in Hong Kong as an artist believes they will bring good luck to the city. And finally, what makes June 9th significant? On this day in 1934, Donald Duck made his first movie appearance. The character featured in Walt Disney's The Wise Little Hen. Donald Duck is Disney's most popular character. With his trademark shirt and bow tie, he even became the most published comic book character in the world, besides superheroes. That's all I have for you today on Vantage, but do catch Flashback tomorrow at 8 p.m. IST. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend. Palki Sharma will be back with Vantage on Monday.
If you follow international news, you must have heard of sanctions. The US sanctions Russia, the UK sanctions China. Have you wondered what it's all about? More importantly, have you wondered why they never work? Well, sanctions have a very old and complicated history. Also, there's a reason why they never seem to work. World leaders know it, but they won't tell you. Tune into Flashback and find out.
開心啊！呢一個時間，哇！睇嚟佢哋諗住跳翻拍舞添喎，係咪？
The US and Russia are dangerously close to an armed conflict. This year, 2023, New Delhi will be the capital of global diplomacy. For a country as diverse as ours, with 88% of the population illiterate, it was a very big deal to write a constitution, and that too, the world's largest. Meanwhile, if we may, here's a Republic Day gift from India for the BBC. A list of suggestions for the BBC for their upcoming documentaries. Number 1, the Kohinoor and the colonial loot. Number 2, an outdated monarchy and unhealthy obsession with the royals. Number 3, racism in 2023. We're waiting.